Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar. I'm Michaela Klauser. I'm Senior Director of Producer Education here at NCBA. We have a couple housekeeping items real quick before we get started. As a participant, your line will be muted, but please feel free to type in questions in the question box on your screen during the webinar, and at the end of the presentations, we will get to as many of those as we can. If you have trouble with your technology or if you're joining us only for the audio, the webinar will be recorded and will be available for viewing in a few days at ncba.org or on the YouTube channel. Just check out the producer tab on the website. The webinar tonight, titled Building a More Resilient Cow Herd, will feature Casey Fanta, Lisa Peterson, and Julia Herman. Casey Fanta grew up on a farm and ranch in Tappan, North Dakota, and pursued a career in ranch and seed stock management after studying at North Dakota State University. His career began with managing limousine cattle for Yackley CMC in South Dakota, followed by managing Little Mondew Limousine in Nevada, and later working at Express Ranches. He then managed Dunford Royal Cattle Company in Ontario, Canada, before moving to Wulf Cattle in Minnesota as the seed stock manager, where he integrated the Angus herd from Dunford Royal into their Lim Flex program. Casey lives in Starbuck, Minnesota with his family. He is actively involved in breeding, promoting, and marketing limousine cattle and serves as the director for both the Minnesota Limousine Association and the Heartland Limousine Association. Additionally joining us, Lisa Peterson. Lisa is an extension beef quality assurance specialist at North Dakota State University, where she conducts programming for both beef and dairy audiences. Her expertise includes beef carcass quality, cattle stewardship, and implementing quality assurance practices. Since joining NDSU in 1999, she has led numerous industry efforts and received the National Beef Quality Assurance Educator Award in 2016. Lisa holds degrees in agricultural business, animal science, and a master's in extension education from Colorado State University. Raised on a ranch in Colorado, she now lives in South Dakota with her family, raising Angus cattle and quarter horses. And last, Dr. Julia Herman. She serves as NCBA's beef cattle specialist veterinarian and consults on animal health and welfare, biosecurity, and foreign animal disease preparedness, and other preventative medicine topics. She has spent time in rural veterinary practice in Kansas, teaching livestock medicine at Colorado State University Veterinary Medicine Program, and currently leads education development and veterinary outreach for the producer education team and national BQA program. She represents NCBA on cattle health and welfare advisory committees for veterinary organizations and agricultural groups. Julia earned her DVM and MS from Colorado State University and is a diplomat of the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine. With that, Casey, I'm going to pass it off to you.
All right, welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. Hope everybody's in a nice warm spot. Seems like there's cold weather across a lot of the country, and I guess it's a good night to be in the house or in your office listening to a webinar. I'm going to go through what I do, and I'm a lot better at answering questions than presentations. So if there's things that you think of while I'm talking, and I know we have a spot for questions afterwards, I'll sure do my best to answer them. I am the seed stock manager for Wulf Cattle, which is based out of Morris, Minnesota. I've done that for the past 12 years, but have spent a whole lifetime in the purebred cattle business, marketing and managing purebred cattle. So Wulf Cattle was started by Leonard Wulf and his sons. They were cattle feeders, but in the late 70s they started raising limousine cattle because they liked the cattle, how the cattle performed in the feedlot, and so they started raising limousine cattle. Their slogan used to be they were cattle feeders before they were cattle breeders, because they truly started because they believed in the cattle and what they did for them. We sell 500 to 600 bulls a year. We sell limousine Limflex, which is a hybrid limousine Angus animal, and Angus bulls. We sell bulls across the US and Canada. We now run our cow herd in Nebraska at Sandy Ridge Ranch at Atkinson, Nebraska. We've been down there for about 10 years now. We just outgrew what we had for land base in Minnesota. As we started developing more bulls, we needed a better situation for those where we didn't have to deal with as much mud and we didn't have to pour as much concrete. So we moved to the ranch in Atkinson, Nebraska, where we have nice big sandy pens. We have Vitality feed intake systems there that we measure the feed intake of the bulls. We have a nice, nice areas for calving, a little bit better weather than Minnesota, and definitely a drier climate. We run about 200 registered cows there that we raise our bulls from, that we sell every year. I believe that the foundation of those bulls that we sell starts with a good vaccination and nutritional program. No matter what your protocol may be, I suggest that you find what works and try to stick with it the best you can. No matter what those vaccinations are on newborn calves or the protocols that you have in place. All those systems are important to overall calf health and just ensuring the best calf crop possible. We don't run a closed herd or anything like that. We do bring in outside cattle. We limit it and we try to move them into the herd, gradually, just to make sure that there's no problems. And we do annual Leone's testing on our herd. Now, it would be really hard for us to have a closed herd because we also feed cattle at our ranch in Nebraska at Sandy Ridge, and we bring mostly customers' calves back to feed in our feedlot there. So there is constant movement at the ranch with cattle, in and out. I've always said sometimes that's better for cattle health than cattle that have never been exposed to anything. They get us exposed to everything there is. We just try to make sure that we have everything, well vaccinated. Those calves get vaccinated at birth. They get vaccinated again at branding. They get vaccinated pre-weaning, at weaning, and again 3 weeks post-weaning. So along with the bulls that we sell, they all get vaccinated when we're doing semen tests and preparing for the sale. And we're big believers in getting the cattle well vaccinated. We're sending these bulls out. A lot of them go to long-term customers that we buy their calves back. We have a quite integrated system where we have enough confidence in our genetic program that we want to feed those calves back. We know the value of good genetics. And like I said before, many of them come back to Sandy Ridge Ranch at Atkinson or to the Wulf Cattle Depot, which is at McLaughlin, South Dakota. We're just in the process of preparing for our annual bull sale, which is our 43rd annual. That'll be on April the 3rd. We have an open house on March 25th and 26th. Where we have our customers come in and we visit about their genetic needs, and we also go over their carcass data from the prior cattle, discuss what type of genetics they should be used, but we also go over their health data on the calves that we've brought back from them and fed, which is very eye-opening to some guys, and we've really been able to help a lot of customers by filling in holes and gaps where maybe they weren't sending in as healthy a product as it needed to be, by figuring out where the problems lie, if it's when the cattle come in or after they've been there for a while, and making sure that we get those covered so that we have success feeding those same cattle going forward. The bulls that are in the sale, like I said, we're actually going through next week, and our vets will be there, Sweetgrass vet out of Dimmock, South Dakota, and we do semen tests on the bulls. They get vaccinated again. They do a visual appraisal and make sure that those bulls are good to go on a truck after our sale. We'll sell 330 bulls on the sale and 30 open heifers. And those cattle, about a week to 2 weeks after the sale, they go on trucks and they get delivered across the country. We don't hang on to them. Everything's been validated, and we're ready to send those cattle out to their new homes. So it's very important that the vaccinations and everything are up to date, and we have everything in order to ensure that the new owners have success with those bulls once they land at their operation. I just talked with Sweetgrass Vet today. I wanted to check and see, but they told me that we do 650 to 750 health papers each and every year. Every bull that leaves the ranch for interstate shipment leaves with the proper health testing and documentation, whether that be trick tests to go to certain western states, or if we have to do any kind of testing or health papers. This is greatly aided by the fact that we have EIDs in every animal on the ranch. This helps with the movement of cattle and tracking throughout the system. It makes doing health papers and everything easier, as well as allows us to track treatments and that type of thing. So if there's ever a problem, we know that maybe that animal had been treated at some time in its life or what have you. But the EIDs are instrumental in the ease of shipping those cattle out across the country. And I think whatever your program is, I feel it's very important to have protocols in place and a system for the health of those cattle and from the time that they're born, whether it be vaccinations, care, nutrition, whatever it may be. It all equates to long-term health and success in your operation. I'll turn it back to you guys.
Thank you all for attending tonight. I hope you're safe wherever you are, and that if you're calving, everything is going good. And if you're not calving and feeding out some cattle, I hope pen conditions are good and you're making some money. So tonight we're talking about building resilience into our cow herds, and I think it's good that we know what resilience really means, and that's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. And we talk a lot in this business about building a resilient range or grasslands, building resilient people. Well, what do we need to do to build resilient cows? Well, I think that's cows or cattle that are healthy, that are in good shape, that can take on a lot of things. And I think about right now, it's about 30 below in Mandan, North Dakota. Our cows really need to have some good condition on them to be resilient towards the weather, for example. So I have some fun things in here. I love my job and I can't imagine not having fun with it. And so 100 ranchers were asked what they did in their spare time. And we could probably ask Casey this, but he might answer a little different because 90 of them didn't understand the question. 7 didn't know what day it was, and the rest couldn't hear well enough to answer the question. And I totally understand that. We are all so busy that we're wondering where are we going to find time to implement any biosecurity programs. And I think we just need to step back and think about what happens if we don't. And so our good friend Dr. Portillo, who we lost way too early last year and a half or so, said biosecurity, it's simple, but it's not easy. And I think that is such a true story. It really is. It's a simple concept. Prevent diseases from coming into your operation and diseases from leaving your operation. And that would be much easier if we were in a totally and completely sealed building. But even then, it's not easy because animals have to come in and out, and so do people and other inputs. So let's talk about what biosecurity is. And I think oftentimes people think that we're going to build a moat around our place and never let anybody come or go. And the reality is, in most of our everyday biosecurity, that isn't true. So biosecurity is a practice that's designed, or practices designed, to prevent the introduction or the spread of diseases between animals or animals and people, zoonotic diseases. And I always use the example of TB and brucellosis, tuberculosis and brucellosis. The reasons why we pasteurize milk is to prevent the spread between animals and people of tuberculosis and brucellosis. And remarkably, that actually works to prevent the spread of salmonella and E. coli and a whole bunch of other diseases. And so that's a really good example of having a practice that is part of a biosecurity plan. Our goal is really to minimize the risk of disease. And I love this quote by Dr. Nick Lyons. He's from a veterinarian in Great Britain, and it says, biosecurity is a verb. And that means that it's always changing and adapting. It's a continuous effort. And I hope as you think about biosecurity for your operation, that it just doesn't become a plan that we build and we throw it on the shelf and we never ever look at it again. In order for biosecurity and a biosecurity plan, if you develop one, to really be the most effective, it's something we have to do on a daily basis. We have to be intentional about that effort. So here's just some things that go into biosecurity. You'll see up in the upper left-hand corner, salmonella outbreak linked to pet turtles sicken 51 people. Brazil detects Newcastle disease in poultry. South Africa is struggling to contain foot and mouth disease. People were sickened from drinking raw milk that had salmonella. Bird flu is detected in dairy cattle. And then down in the bottom left-hand corner, swine fever is sweeping Italy, certainly threatening their prosciutto production. And more recently, foot and mouth disease was found in Germany this past fall. And I think about all of my neighbors who've been to Germany in the last 2 months, and I hope that they don't bring foot and mouth disease back home with them. Which brings us to biosecurity protocols. You know, I know that if I am the speaker at a program and I am on talking about biosecurity, hardly anybody shows up to hear me. That's not exactly what they want to hear, but maybe it is the thing that we should all want to hear, because it is the cheapest and most effective means of disease control. And I know it's not sexy, I know it's not the easy button, but it is certainly the cheapest and most effective, and certainly no disease program works without some biosecurity. And a good biosecurity program protects a herd or humans from diseases in which there's really no vaccines, good vaccines or expensive vaccines. And trick in cattle is a really great example of this. If you're fighting trichomoniasis, biosecurity is the greatest way to stop that. Tuberculosis, again, is another great example that we have really no good vaccines or effective vaccines or affordable vaccines for TB. And so a good biosecurity plan will help in preventing TB as well. And it protects against our common diseases. So about every 3 or 4 years, I'll get calls about pink eye in cattle. And I can almost see it go across pastures from pasture to pasture in cattle. And so pink eye is a really common disease that if we just had a little better biosecurity, maybe we wouldn't have been fighting it in those herds. Other very common diseases like BVD, and then our foreign animal diseases like foot and mouth disease. And I love this Far Side cartoon. There's a couple of folks who have met at a social establishment, and the man says, "You're from France. Wow, say you have lovely eyes." And then if you look on the bottom half, it says the viruses are saying, "Hey, everyone, we're going to Paris." So if you want to be a virus, it's pretty easy to see the world and how we spread. So why is biosecurity so important? Well, we do have real world threats, and this is the latest map of where we have foot and mouth disease in the world. The green, the darker green, are members or countries that are recognized as free without vaccination. The lighter green are areas that are recognized as free with vaccination. That red area is where they were foot and mouth disease free, but now they have some infections. And then all of that gray area, well, those are places that just don't test. And so you can almost assume that they are highly endemic for foot and mouth disease. If you look at Indonesia, and so we'll go back to this previous slide, Indonesia is all that gray area above Australia, which Australia is that country, that island country down in the lower left-hand corner. Indonesia has the fourth largest population on the earth. It's made up of a whole lot of islands. Um, they're really what we'd probably consider a lower income country, a poorer country. Whereas we look at Australia and how close they are, only 400 miles apart, is the fourth largest beef exporter on earth. 70% of their beef production is exported, with their key markets being Japan, Korea, China, and the United States. And then if we look at a one-day international traffic, air traffic associated with Atlanta, and where all these planes come and go from, it's pretty easy to see that a lot of highly endemic areas for foot and mouth disease come right into Atlanta, here in the left hand or the right hand side, excuse me. And if we look at trans-Pacific container ship traffic at any given time, again, the United States is here on the right-hand side, and you can see that all of those ships are coming out of those highly endemic areas for foot and mouth disease and landing on our coasts, which is just part of our economy, right? We are in a world economy, and so because we are in that world economy, we probably need to even be more diligent in having some good biosecurity on our farms and ranches. And so as we talk about the importance of biosecurity, it first and foremost decreases the spread of disease and parasites. And, we were talking about the African, or let's see, the Asian longhorn tick, and how devastating that parasite has been in the eastern U.S. Likewise, the New World screwworm has made its way into the Americas. It's been found in southern Mexico, and it'll be equally as devastating. So biosecurity is not only important for diseases, but also our parasites, which can be very devastating to a country. If we have good biosecurity, our cost of production decreases. They just go hand in hand. That will help ensure that we have a strong domestic and export market for our U.S. beef. And if you don't realize the value of exports to our beef market, in 2024, exports added about $440 a head, which I don't know if Casey talked about it or not, but if we look to our neighbors to the north in Canada, what happened to their beef industry after BSE, it devastated it mostly because of exports. But we also felt that here in the US when we had a BSE positive. It also provides a insurance plan for the financial and animal health of your ranch. And I think resilience around ranches and farms really oftentimes centers around the financial health. Lots of times when things are going south financially, the mental health of the operators goes downhill. Then we'll start noticing that the range health goes downhill, the animal health goes downhill, and it really just becomes a snowball effect. And so if we want to build some really good financial resilience into our operations, think about biosecurity. And here's a great example why. Bred cows, 4 to 5 years of age, are selling for $2,500 to $3,000 each, maybe even more. Bred heifers have pretty easily been selling here in the north for $3,000 to $3,500. All weights of feeder cattle have been selling for $2,000 to $3,000 each, and finished cattle are selling for well over $3,000 a head. So what's the financial risk to your operation if your operation or if our industry in terms of a foreign animal disease are infected? So I know that biosecurity is a really big elephant to eat. And so how do we eat an elephant? Well, you eat the thing at one bite at a time. I love this cartoon elephant that I found. He has a brisket, a chuck, ribs, short loin, sirloin, a rump, a round. And so he's a very anatomically correct elephant. And so I like to think about where are the easy bites to take, the easy parts of the elephant to eat. First and foremost, if you do not have one, establish a strong working relationship with your veterinarian. And when I say strong, I mean more than just calling the vet when you have a calving problem and to preg test and bangs vaccinate and maybe semen test your bulls. A strong relationship means that they know you, your operation, and your livestock, and we're going to use our veterinarians for their brains, not just their body, but their brains and their disease knowledge. And so they can help us identify the biosecurity strengths and weaknesses of our operation. Every single operation is different, so they can help us develop biosecurity plans and help us decide what diseases are really an issue for us. You know, if you're in the business of buying short-term cows, calving them out, feeding them, selling them, biosecurity is going to look a whole lot different than it should for you if you are a purebred operation selling registered bulls and heifers across the country. Work with your team, sit down with them and take the time to develop a plan. And it's a plan that everybody buys into. You know, if the oldest generation is 85 years old and says, this is really important because we've put this herd in the ground once because of brucellosis, listen to them. If the middle-aged folks are like, hey, this doesn't matter, we've got something to treat all these diseases with, maybe we need to take some time to talk about why treatment always isn't the best plan, but prevention is. And, you know, in that group, we should have a veterinarian, your owners, if you're a big operation, your managers, I think having a nutritionist and an extension person, your BQA coordinator, others on your team, because everybody's going to see something a little bit different. And we do know that there are different levels of risk, as I said before, and therefore biosecurity is going to be different with different management and business models. Have a good communication plan about what we're going to do if an emergency occurs. What are we going to do? How are we going to communicate? Who needs to be reached? Who needs to know? You know, I always find it interesting that in the dairy business, they share with each other what's going on their places and if they're fighting some type of infection or disease. Beef cattle people, they would see their entire herd go in the ground before they ever told somebody they had a problem. And so maybe starting some communication with our veterinarians is really important. And by all means, build your team before you get on the scene, and you have to know what you're doing. And don't be like these guys, the cavemen that found a woolly mammoth for dinner. They're having their big barbecue, and the one guy says to the others, "What, you mean no one brought the buns?" They obviously did not have a good communication plan for their barbecue. I'm going to ask you, where have your feet been? And what's hitched a ride on them? So these are my favorite boots. I wear them every day, except for I don't wear them to our ranch. I don't wear them outside of the house of our ranch. And the reason why is all these little purple flags is every place that my feet have been in the last 45 days. And that includes auction markets, other cattle operations, a big convention, airports, Boston. I've been all over the country, and so have my feet. And so I don't want to bring anything home on my feet, but I also don't want to take anything from my operation with them. And so I think a second easy bite of the elephant is to have separate footwear and clothing for wearing on and off the ranch. Diseases in pets, hitch rides on dirt, dust, manure, clothes, shoes, clothing, vehicles, and so much more. And so we need to remember that we need to remove our mud and manure and urine and other organic matter regularly and disinfect those. But we cannot disinfect a turd. I know producers love disinfectant because that's the easy button. But the fact of the matter is the easy button doesn't work if we don't remove that organic matter. So remember to do that first. A third easy bite is to have a quarantine or isolation plan for newly acquired animals, whether those animals are purchased or loaned. Sorry, I should have had loaned in there. That's a typo. A very good friend of mine who was our state vet here in North Dakota when I started said most diseases are bought and paid for. And I think that's such a true story. And so when we're bringing new animals in, isolate them for at least 21 days. Ideally, we would not want them to have nose-to-nose or fence line contact or share feed and water with the existing herd. This allows for us to observe for diseases, test for diseases, and vaccinate or revaccinate like we would our normal herd, because zero risk does not exist. And I think Casey probably agrees with me. We have a bull sale coming in the next couple weeks, and one of the things that sometimes really bothers me is that our customers never ask us, well, what's the vaccination plan of these bulls? You know, what have you tested for? It's almost like they trust us so much that they don't even think about the fact that there may be a risk. And so if you look at the cattle hustler over on the right, he says to the cow, so what do you say? Maybe we could go back to my place, have a few drinks, a little alfalfa, maybe we could show each other our brands, ha ha ha. Lots of times cattle have a lot of brands. They've come from a lot of places, and so ask those questions to protect your herd. Number 4 in the taking the easy bites is keep some great records of livestock purchases, sales, and movements to exhibitions, rodeos, and shows. This is going to be imperative should we ever have a disease outbreak. But it's also going to be imperative if you have an outbreak of a novel disease to your operation that's maybe common in a lot of places. One that, you know, I see pretty often right now is hairy heel wart in cattle. And I'll get a call from a guy that, you know, they have cattle that are not responding to foot rot treatment. They get them in and they find these gross looking growths on the heel of their cattle or on the feet of their cattle. Well, it turns out to be hairy heel wart. And so they start thinking back about where that could have come from. And I think that if they look at their purchase and sale records and where their cattle have been, they'll probably find the answer. So biosecurity helps ensure our security of business by preparing our producers, our vets, our packing industry, our food industry, because really and truly, our job is still to feed people, and our regulatory officials before an outbreak occurs. Recognizing that it's more profitable to prevent problems than correct them is so important. If it takes $1 to correct a problem, you're saving $500 down the road. Prevention of everyday diseases and foreign animal diseases is imperative, and biosecurity is a huge, huge piece in that. And the health of our cattle supply and our food supply really depends on it. But there is a challenge between finding a balance between what's necessary and practical versus having a plan for foreign animal diseases. But I think in every challenge, there is an opportunity that is in disguise. And so look at these as a way that we can have a more resilient cow herd, a more resilient feedlot or dairy, whatever your operation is, and start taking those little bites off of that elephant, and pretty soon you'll have the elephant eaten. So with that, Julia?
I think Casey and Lisa really set me up pretty well. Like, you get the producer aspect of what biosecurity means to their operation. Lisa, as a producer and as an educator, tells us a little bit about biosecurity and those steps we can be taking. I'm here to really to talk about that foreign animal disease piece that she mentioned. And one of the projects that that NCBA has been working on has been to improve biosecurity planning resources for foot and mouth disease preparedness for cattle producers. And for those of you who, there we go. Many of us, many producers may not have dealt with a new or highly contagious disease. I think we can take a lot of lessons from our partners in the dairy industry. They have this new disease that we haven't characterized before, and so they're learning as they go. We should learn from not just them, but other livestock industries who have been dealing with diseases, highly infectious and highly economical diseases. But when enhanced biosecurity is needed, we really need to be prepared ahead of time. And as Lisa mentioned, there is never zero risk of exposure, but how can we mitigate that exposure as much as we can? So getting started seems like it might be, we're taking those baby steps. And then when you jump to that enhanced biosecurity plan, sometimes it looks a little bit daunting, but big journeys begin with small steps, and it takes time to get to this enhanced biosecurity plan that will be needed for foot and mouth disease. At the same time, this can be customized to your operation, and we're here to show you just some of those resources that you can use on your operation. I borrowed this slide from Danelle Bickett-Weddle, who is a contractor with us on this project, but I thought this was a really great way to understand why biosecurity is important now. And this is from a daily aspect, like those everyday diseases that our speakers already talked about, so BRD, Johne's, brucellosis, but also those foreign animal diseases like foot and mouth disease. But if we have less disease challenges, we have better animal health. So if we improve nutrition to all of our animals, their immune systems are going to be stronger, they're going to be healthier and not be as affected by disease incursions. If you decrease the germ load, so that cleaning and disinfection piece of biosecurity, you have better animal health because you're lowering that dose of that infectious pathogen, whatever it might be, and therefore hopefully less severe disease. Better animal health also equals better economic benefits. If our animals are healthy, they're producing with whatever goal that they happen to be, and that makes our lives a lot easier too. So just a brief review of foot and mouth disease. This is the most contagious viral disease of animals, of two-toed animals in the world. So cattle, pigs, sheep, and goats can get these blisters or vesicles on their feet, on their mouth, but death is low in adults. Sickness is high, though. This is the U.S. hasn't seen foot and mouth disease since 1929. Our entire livestock industry is naive, and so it's going to spread very quickly. Depopulation is a common control strategy. You may have remembered some visuals from the UK outbreak in 2001. FMD is not a public health or food safety concern, so humans do not get sick from it, and meat is still safe to eat, but it is a world trade limiting disease, as Lisa alluded to earlier. FMD is spread between livestock in bodily fluids like saliva, urine, milk, and even semen 2 to 4 days before clinical signs appear. And so similar in pigs, and sheep are kind of a wild card because they may not show clinical signs, but they're still able to spread the disease via contaminated wool. But there's a lot of ways that this virus can spread, and it's very similar to how BBD or BRD spreads. When we're looking at biosecurity planning, not just for foot and mouth disease, but when we're building our daily biosecurity plan, we're thinking about how those pathogens get onto the farm. So there's lots of ways that these can get onto the farm. It could be coming in on animals and animal products, like both Casey and Lisa talked about, and that's why quarantining our new animals and testing new animals before they come onto the farm is really important. Wildlife, rodents, and birds. That's why a pest management plan is an integrated pest management plan is important. The two-leggeds are probably where we could do the most improvement. So clothing and footwear for anyone from the employees to industry stakeholders that are coming on and off. You know, maybe you have a feed rep or you're a veterinarian, salespeople, visitors, but also our equipment, vehicles, feed, airborne. There's a lot of different ways that viruses and bacteria can enter the farm. How do we think about what risks our farm has at the moment, and what can we do to prepare better for it? So this is that project that I told you about. We're going to focus on the foot and mouth disease aspect, but our project was developing and delivering education and outreach to U.S. beef producers, veterinarians, and transporters about the secure beef supply plan to further industry collaboration, prevention, and preparedness for foot and mouth disease. This is funded by USDA National Animal Disease Preparedness and Response Plan. We are fortunate to get this grant. Why we applied for this grant, we really wanted to help cattle producers and anybody else in the industry, from ranchers to transporters to veterinarians and allied industry. We wanted to help them understand why secure beef supply plans are important, and how do we get biosecurity more top of mind and bring out that more intentional planning like Lisa mentioned. We have an advisory group that Lisa happens to be on, so she happily said yes to presenting with me today. But we invited a number of experts from across the country to look at the resources available and conduct a gap analysis on what is missing, what can be improved to help producers and others in the industry understand planning, this secure beef supply planning, and implement it on their operations. This is an overview of the project and resources that have been developed already. It is available on ncba.org under the Producers tab. And I'm going to go through some of these, but if you're interested in this one page, you're welcome to go and download that. But one of the first things that we needed, we prioritized the creation of some new resources for further outreach and understanding. Two of those resources here, one is what to expect in a national movement standstill. So if foot and mouth disease gets to the US, there will be a national standstill of at least 72 hours that will be nationally mandated. This will be to understand where those infected animals and those exposed animals are and figure out where we can contain that outbreak as quickly as possible. This premises identification document is it goes through what is a premises, why is a premises identification needed, and how do you go and get this identification number. Both documents were reviewed by our advisory group, and also which also includes representatives from USDA, and it also aligns with the federal outbreak guidance that will that everybody will have to follow in the event of a foot and mouth disease outbreak. Here is a secure beef supply enhanced biosecurity supply list, and so this is if you do need to start getting biosecurity tools or supplies, this is a starting list that you can have. We also made sure that we linked to resources that were already developed. We didn't reinvent the wheel, so QR codes are available for that. Other resources, one of the really cool things about this project is we've been able to make a lot of some new resources for haulers and transporters. Haulers and transporters previously had not have as many resources for them in this arena, and so we're pretty excited to have those. And we'll also have another webinar in a couple weeks speaking to the transporter industry, so tune in for that. But we have a contingency planning and enhanced biosecurity steps for haulers and transporters. They're a very important part of our industry, and we want to make sure that they are prepared as well for an outbreak like this. If you haven't already created a premises map, we have a video and a worksheet that you can work through to build that premises map. SBS partnered with the Beef Quality Assurance Program to make sure all of our biosecurity resources are similar and they reference each other to make sure if you go to the BQA website or you go to the SBS website, you're going to find the same materials. Resources that we are developing, we've developed some posters for auction markets to try to get more biosecurity knowledge out there. And we're also building some new videos for feedlot and pasture cattle looking at clinical signs. As I mentioned, all of our resources for secure beef supply and all of our biosecurity resources are available on Secure Beef Supply and the BQA websites. So check those out. Our goal is to get information into the hands of producers and haulers as much as we can. So that's what the goal of these webinars has been, is really trying to reach out to as many people in the industry to show them what resources are available to them. We have done some train the trainer events this year at some different veterinary and BQA state coordinator meetings. So if you want some help building your biosecurity plan, you can reach out to us and we can connect you with somebody who's been through a training. We're also filming, we've also filmed at a stocker operation in Alabama and a cow-calf operation in North Dakota. You'll see Lisa there again. But these are to build sector-specific videos so that these cattle sectors can understand the importance of building biosecurity plans and how they can implement it like other producers within their own sector. This is the first of 4 webinars that are focused on biosecurity. So we're going to have stalker backgrounder, transporters and haulers, and biosecurity manager roles coming up. So make sure you RSVP for those. If you haven't seen it already, on October 29th, we had a Cattlemen to Cattlemen episode that focused all on biosecurity, secure beef supply, and preparedness planning. So that's a really great overview of what our project is doing and then what is happening in the industry. So take a look at that. You can find that on YouTube. And then we're promoting new and existing secure beef supply info to basically anybody who will listen to us. So producer conferences, veterinary conferences, state associations, ag media. We're really trying to get this information out there because it's the best way we can prepare for foot and mouth disease is to prepare now voluntarily. So this brings us to the need for the secure beef supply plan. It provides resources to protect your herd in control areas that are affected by movement controls but not infected with FMD, so that we can maintain supply chain integrity. Anybody within the cattle industry, from ranchers to feedlot operators to transporters, we're going to rely on cattle movements to provide quality beef products to grocers and consumers. And the secure beef supply plan provides that guidance for moving cattle, but also to minimize that lost income across sectors of the beef industry during an outbreak. That's all that I have. Please email me if you have any questions. Go check out our resources at securebeef.org and bqa.org. And we have a couple of questions in queue. So I'm going to start with Casey. Bring Casey back on. Casey, you talked about how you have a couple of different populations on your. We'll focus on your Nebraska herd. So we have your cow-calf operation, your bull development, and what different. How do you change your biosecurity? Like, how do you protect each of those populations? Because they do have a little bit different risk. But what are some things that you think about with your veterinarian as you're developing these herd health and biosecurity plans to protect, like, your cow-calf herd versus your bull development?
Thanks. We try to keep our pens for our bull development exclusive to the bulls in our genetic cattle. Sometimes the feedlot cattle do get pretty close. Like I said, I still feel like the best prevention is to make sure that everything is thoroughly vaccinated. And sometimes I feel like our cattle are at less risk when they've actually been exposed to some things, and we have vaccinated them properly to make sure that they have the immunity to withstand it. Our cow herd, runs on the pastures around the feedlot and the bull development center. There is a little commingling, but not a lot. For the most part, those cattle run out on the pastures. We do run some, we background some cattle on the fields right around the ranch. And so there is a lot of, not necessarily commingling, but they are close. So we feel that, we do the best that we can, but the most important thing is making sure that those cattle are protected, by a good vaccination program. We talk about that with our vets, and we keep very close eye on on the results. Like I had said earlier, every animal on the place, whether they're feedlot cattle, bulls that we're developing, are the cows in the herd. Our baby calves get EIDs the day that they're born, so we use those EIDs to track treatments and that type of thing, and really keep a handle on what's going on, so that if we do find a problem, it's easily identifiable, and we know what's going on right away, because we keep very complete records of every kind of treatment that happens on the ranch.
No, that's fantastic. I think, yeah, herd health and biosecurity really overlap a lot, and I think you explained that with your relationship with your veterinarian, but also just everything that you just said. And Lisa, Lisa talked about it in her talk too, but Lisa, I'm gonna ask this question to you because you're in pig country. You're at least in more pig country than I am. So one of the questions is, I know it's different, but what can the cattle industry learn from the pig and the poultry industries with disease outbreaks? So what have you seen in your extension work where you can take lessons from your swine and poultry producers and apply it to cattle?
I think first and foremost is to leave your shoes in the house that go other places. So, like the boots on my feet will never see our ranch. The pork and poultry industries are so diligent to, almost shower in, shower out type things, wearing clean clothing every time you go into a facility, really not bringing in outside animals until that barn is emptied. And, those are totally different models of production too, though. And that doesn't always work in our world of livestock. And so they have a very good quarantine system if they do. On the other hand, I think sometimes, and Casey said this, it's sometimes a little bit nice to have some disease challenge so we have some innate immunity because lots of times our animals in pork and poultry don't have a whole lot of immunity because they are so isolated from disease, which is the goal. And so when something does move in, it's pretty traumatic and tragic in those operations. But they just take biosecurity. Their operations are about biosecurity almost first, and all of the other things come after that. And so it has made for a very efficient model for them as a rule.
That's great. I think, looking at the big picture on everything that you do to take care of that animal, and I think that's one thing we can learn from. I mean, I think we can learn from that regardless of the industry, the livestock industry. But yeah, how do you control as much? Well, pork and poultry are able to control the environment a lot better than we are in the cattle industry, and because of that, I think that it improves their biosecurity to an extent. But like you said, Lisa, that's the way that they produce their animals.
I think, Julia, one
Go ahead.
thing, I have to say this, I'm in pretty big turkey country. You don't have to get very far south of us and east of us, and it's the majority of the turkey production area in the United States. And I really feel for those folks that are dealing with high path avian influenza because they've been through it 2 or 3 times, and those turkey barns are as tight as can be, and it's really hard to find the chink in their armor, so to speak, because they do have their biosecurity so tight, and it is devastating to them. We talk about, you hear on the news, well, we're just euthanizing all these birds because I guess we have to, but the reality is that high path AI is very, very a very brutal disease, and all those birds will likely die a pretty traumatic death if we don't euthanize them. And so to see the emotional side of that with our producers has been really, really hard, especially when they work so hard on biosecurity. And so I just want to make sure people take care of themselves if something does happen, because it is their livelihoods. And so the resilience is not only of your herd, but of you yourself. And if you're not well mentally, your operation's not going to be well anywhere.
No, absolutely. And I think, that training and discussing it with your team prior as a proactive, like it's onboarding, it's a yearly training, things like that about biosecurity, I think is really important regardless of the type of farm you have. I have a couple of foot and mouth disease questions that I'll answer really quick. One of them is FMD is transmitted. It can be transmitted by wildlife, though it really depends on the wildlife species. The question was, is it transmitted from farm to farm by wildlife? Are they carriers? In the U.S., there isn't a lot of research. Well, there's minimal research on what species in the U.S. may be affected by foot and mouth disease. The big reason that foot and mouth disease will spread in the U.S. is because of a lot from our livestock industry animals, and also maybe our feral animals. FMD, how big of a risk is FMD to the U.S.? I think it's huge. I think Lisa showed the traffic coming in and out of the country, and that's not just ag traffic. That's tourism, that's business, that's vacationers. That traffic coming in and out of the U.S. and then how big our livestock industry is. I think the threat is very big, and I think that's why we wanted to bring all these resources to you so you can start thinking about it. And think about those steps where you can protect your herd on a daily basis with things like the BQA Daily Biosecurity Plan, but then also moving up to that enhanced biosecurity plan in case you do have to quarantine from foot and mouth disease. This is a good question that I want both Casey and Lisa. Well, we only have a minute left, so think about it. What is a good protocol for producers that have kids with show cattle? All of the shows require health papers, but I know some cattle can pick up ringworm. The first thing I'm going to add to this is hand hygiene. Always wash your hands. Don't eat around, if you can help it, don't eat around your cattle, around poop, around urine, any of those body fluids. We can still, even though you're around your show animals a lot, you can still get sick from them. So I think protection for your own health, that's one piece. So Casey and Lisa, do you guys have any quick tips for this?
I guess just make sure that you're not sharing any kind of equipment, whether it be combs and brushes or feed pans, water buckets, that type of thing. Usually try to discourage that. Shows are tough because you are co-mingling with different cattle from all over the place. And again, I just reiterate, it's important to have those cattle vaccinated and covered to prevent them from picking anything up while they're at the show, and if they do, being able to fight that off.
I think that it's important that you don't bring those show animals home and reunite them with your herd at home. Make sure you quarantine them like you would new entrants into your herd.
That's awesome. Well, folks, we are at the top of the hour. I want to thank Casey Fanta and Lisa Peterson for joining us on this webinar, talking to cow-calf producers and how we can improve our biosecurity. The presentations can be made available after the talk. You can email me, jherman@beef.org, for those if you are interested. And thank you all for joining us. Please reach out if you have any questions, and go to Secure Beef Supply and bqa.org to check out our resources. So thanks, everybody.